Not the Footy Show.
Pappenhausen. Oh, picked up and dumped. George Williams, he can do it all.
You can do it!
Oh, yes, we can. And yes, we will.
G'day everyone, welcome to episode 213 of Not The Footy Show. I'm Warrick, Nicolson, and over there we are back in the Rugby League. Cox Smith, welcome back, Mr. Robb Cox.
G'day, mate. How you doing? Monday, the Monday after the first round back from coronavirus pandemic panic and all that sort of stuff. Yep, back. Good to be back. Good to be back.
In Rugby League, 8 games in the can, and I'm titling this podcast One Ref and 50,000 Completions. That's what we're calling Rugby League now, because all the stats that we've seen since they've basically been taking stats seriously have been blown out of the water in one weekend, Cocksmith. Have you ever seen... I reckon the completion stat is useless. I'll just put it up there. But much ado about nothing. Completions, what's your take? Because we saw 1 billion of them on the weekend.
Oh, well, I love the completion stat, actually. As a one-time junior coach, completions were everything for me. So yeah, I like the completion stat. It usually tells you how a team's going, but sometimes it's a little bit fuzzy, you know. And first weekend back, I got a bit to say about the way they played, but really, I don't know if you can take too much into stats in the first week. Probably the first month back. Once we've gone through another 3 or 4 rounds, I think that's when the stats will start to make a bit more sense. I've
trapped you a little bit there because I am going to come later on in the podcast and ask you what you think of Mia McGregor and Dean Pay, who both are in love with completions. And I'm sure that your viewpoint on both of them will be a little bit different. So I apologise for setting the honey trap for you there, Big Bear. We're going to get into episode 213 after the break here on Not The Footy Show. Plenty to talk about, all the round 3 action and some hot takes. We've seen some classic hot takes in the last 48 hours, and we're going to add some of our own here on Not The Footy Show, episode 213.
Not the Footy Show.
And at the moment, they've got a pair of halves there, and I don't like being disrespectful to them, but they're just not going to compete with the top teams. We saw that tonight. Mate, they had 1,000 chances, and they go nowhere. They don't do anything.
Sound like ice, buddy. When I don't like you, you got problems.
Okay, we're back. It's 213. Robb Cox over there, Warrick Nicolson here. Mate, we went onto YouTube last week, and I cut the show up a little bit. All right. And I put our 6 again, 15 minutes, whatever he spent on it. It went nuts over the weekend. The biggest downside, unfortunately, is that our take wasn't overly positive. And so everyone who's seen our video over the course of the last 3 days is going, what are these two niff-nuffs on about? Because what we've seen, Cocksmith, is actually, I think, a positive. Even though our viewpoint was more around how do they police repeated infringements and the sin bin and all that kind of stuff. That's really where we dive into. The initial way that the 6 again has been handled, the one referee has been handled. What is your view, and are you still are you positive towards it, or do you think we need some tinker soldier spy?
No, I like the one referee, mate. I like the one referee for a couple of reasons. Because with the 2 referee system, they were onto everything. Like the great Gus Goulding once said, you know, they don't. Sometimes the referees are like highway patrol blokes hiding behind a bush with a little radar gun and gotcha, you know. And I don't know if people want that. I don't know if people want the fans want the nitpick. You know, I think as long as it's fair for both teams and there's not the referee isn't picking on one team, I think some things can just be let go. And I don't mean to let a team cheat. I just mean there are some discretional infringements that can just be let roll for the sake of the game rolling forward. I think the 6 to go thing was fantastic. I like the way that it was implemented. We did see some sin binnings on the weekend, so that hasn't.
But they weren't. They were more professional fouls than they were indiscretions in the play the ball. That was the difference in that.
Yeah, you know what? I've actually come to believe after 1 week, and my book is still open on this, but I've come to believe that I think the 6 to go is actually a bigger penalty than marching someone over and saying, mate, if you don't get off him, you'll be gone next time. 6 to go, buddy. If you want to do this, I can just line up 24 tackles at your line, and you know they're going to score against you. So I think in some instances, it's better to go the 6 to go. The players don't have a chance to whinge. They can whinge on the run if they want.
I like that. That was enjoyable.
Yeah, and I think, I think that it's a good thing. I think Mr. Volandis or whoever came up with this particular tweak of the rules has done well so far. I think it's, as long as the referees keep doing it. I don't know about the siren that they let off.
You mean it's the smoke alarm that goes off in your house?
You feel
and
like
you get up and you go, "Is my house on fire?" Every time you hear that little ding, 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 ding.
Yeah, I couldn't figure it out what it was at first when I was at the game yesterday. And I'm like, oh, that's that bloody...
So that's piped through the speakers at the ground? Because you were at Campbelltown yesterday, weren't you, for Panthers and Knights for 90,000 minutes?
Yes.
I like how it was interpreted. I think, especially at the start of the matches, they were finger on the button and they were ready to call it. I do have some reservations still surrounding how it's applied really from the 60th minute onwards. I did notice in a few of the games, I watched most of the games pretty closely this weekend, that it got lax towards the end of games where one team was running away with it. Now, that didn't necessarily stop the team who was running away with it scoring points, that they didn't get more 6 again. I think it's something you really touched on last podcast around teams that are out of the games who's going to go, well, let's focus on next week rather than kill ourselves in the last 20. And that is a concern, that it's not going to be necessarily enforced towards the end of matches. Some teams are really good at it in terms of, I think the Roosters on Friday night nailed what you have to do in regards to the play the ball, because we saw on the Thursday, hand on the ball. If you put hand on the ball in the Melbourne game as well, you're cactus, because the referee's watching for that. He's watching for hand on the ball. What he can't legislate as easily is numbers on top of the player. So if you're playing the ball and you've been tackled, the Roosters they were sandwiching. They were outstanding. So that way, off, slower. No one putting their hand in as much. I mean, Hargraves is still pretty good at it, but they were pretty good at just squashing the player. So it was a slower play the ball in regards to that. And what helps the Roosters is their front-on contact against South was so intense that the player who was getting hit, I mean, he just wanted to get to the ground because he just got smashed. So that is something that I saw the Roosters do really well. Melbourne against Canberra, Sofa Solomona just couldn't help himself. A few players couldn't help themselves. I thought Cameron Smith, actually, I watched him really closely. He was pretty good at getting away from hand on ball. He was trying the whole arm around the torso on top. That's what he was. That's one of his bread and butter plays. But they were doing that more often. Jesse Bromwich was also doing that. So Melbourne got sung a little bit, but not heaps. I think they just got off a little bit more and they stopped trying to do as much slowing down the play ball. So what I've seen from that is really good. The one referee I love because he's seeing it through his eyes only. There was, I think, maybe 2 or 3 examples where I reckon the bunkers had little words to referees across the weekend, but it wasn't something that you went, that was the bunker, that was the bunker, that was the bunker. So that was great to see. The 10, look, I can live with a 10 being inconsistent. I don't mind that. That's another part of the whole fatigue element of the game.
It's a human game, mate. It's not a robotic game.
So not having that second ref is great. And the completions that then resulted, I mean, someone, I think it could have been Alexander. He was doing the Warriors game and he lost it over the fact the Warriors completed 40 from 40. Impressive, don't get me wrong. But that 40 from 40 is probably 30 from 30 2 rounds ago, and we didn't have the 6 again.
It's still 100% though.
Still, it was impressive, and there was when my flatmate was walking, he was on his way to work, and he goes to me, "If Andrew Voss was commentating this game, he would have had a party. He would have been all over that stat the entire second half, writing it home like Farlap." And in the end, they obviously made a couple of errors. But I'm watching the games pretty intensely, and the stats that came up, and Parramatta on the Friday night, they got 2 back-to-back, I think, in one set of 6. 2 6 again restarts. So after 3 minutes, they're 3 from 3 on completions. So if I wanted to come back to that whole completions thing with being a little bit inflated, I think that's where this stat is very interesting to see how it's applied from the statisticians, because also, if you're giving away 6 again, it's no longer a penalty against your name. Is it an error? What do they have to come up with a new stat about how they monitor this? Because I wonder if that impacts your completion percentage if it's a 6 again. Because do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I know what you're saying. I don't know how that stat. I don't know who it gets credited to or credited against. But I know what you're saying. You know, it can be a little bit misleading if they get to tackle 3 and they get a 6 again. That's counted as a completion of a set. That could even happen on tackle 2.
I mean, theoretically, also, if you knock the ball down, you give away a penalty, it's a complete set. I get that. It's just this is so much on the run, and the one area where I think the 6 again, and it's not. I think it's actually a good thing for the defence in some respects. But I did notice Manly were good at it last night. And I saw a few other instances, and remember Manly played last of the 8 games, so they would have seen how it. Something that you can get away with. If your team has just given away a 6 again, 0, that next tackle, spend 70 hours in the play the ball if you want to. Let your team get back on side because the referee ain't going to call 6 again straight away. He's going to give, and I noticed it with Jake Trbojevic got away with it at least twice. Yeah. Take your time on that next tackle. Let your defence set because
like it's a branded tackle.
What's he going to do? What's he going to do? Is he going to call 6 again? It doesn't cost you anything.
He might penalise you.
But then you get a break. So there's not a huge negative to taking longer on that very next tackle. Now, it's the way I saw the game and I thought that was what Manly may have done. It could just be the way I'm interpreting it. But that is a little what's the word? Quirk in how I think teams will start to defend it is.
I do think Jake or somebody like Jake though would be in a different mindset if they weren't leading by 30 and they were actually trailing by 8. I think your awareness would be much more that I could get penalised again here, or I could get sin bin for doing a professional foul on a 0 tackle. But I know what you're saying. Players do have a very fast way. Players and teams and coaches very fast to adapt to certain things, and they do push the limit all the time, and that's why they're professional rugby league players. Yeah. But I think that you'll find that the referees will have. They're probably talking about the same thing right now, and they probably will be looking at that to see what kind of what plays are being played at certain moments because of this new rule change, and what kind of is the history of what the players are doing. Okay, so they're always laying on tackle 0. So they'll look at the story being.
It'd be very interesting to see if we're going to see it, we're going to see it this next week. Because teams will be sitting at home going, at video sessions going, could have spent longer there. Sure. And it's going to, and as I say, referees, I think they'll be aware of it as well. And I'm not saying we're the first people ever to notice it, but it's just, as you're looking for that competitive advantage or to stop the disadvantage, really is what it is. It's that initial quick one. I just give it a big tick. It's so far, it's good. The game, it's funny. Everyone was going nuts. The commentators, this is great. One of the greatest games I've ever seen. But we haven't had football for 3 months. I understand it. I don't know if the quality of the football went through the roof, but it was refreshing to see. Does that make sense?
I've got an issue with the attacking football that we saw on the weekend, which we'll talk about a little bit later, but I don't think it was that great. I heard some people doing backflips about the Penrith Knights game yesterday. I don't think it was all that good, to be honest.
I
think the Penrith Knights game was a clear display of how dominant the two halves are in each team, and when you lose them, how dour it can be.
It was hit up. I mean, if you saw the numbers of the back 3 for Penrith, I mean, that's how the reason Penrith didn't win that, and we'll get to them later, but the reason they didn't win that game, they were so busy trying to get up the field, they weren't trying to score points. It was, they should have won the game with about 40 minutes to go, let alone.
Oh, absolutely. And they should never have let the Knights score with 3 seconds to go on the clock.
And let's be honest, the Knights should have won when Bradman Best should have taken the ball himself. There was one other element to the weekend's coverage, which I love it when I see a media organisation pat themselves on the back after about 30 seconds of a game. The crowd noise, Cocksmith. Now, you and I, we went back and forth across the weekend. I know in a few other WhatsApp groups I was in, there was discussions about it. I didn't notice it on Thursday night until it was pointed out to me about 15 minutes into the game. I was watching the Fox Sports broadcast, but I knew it was coming because I'd seen an article promoting the fact that they've come up with this whiz-bang technology that will fill the void in the stands. My explanation to you, I thought it was, is that if you can treat it like the ocean, you kind of know it's there, but unless you really listen for it, when you're near the beach, you don't hear it.
Yeah.
But occasionally through the weekend, it was hitting you over the head like a sledgehammer. And other times I didn't notice it. I didn't hate it, but I certainly didn't think it was the greatest thing invented, a la what Fox Sports seemed to think and Channel 9. What was your view on the pumped up crowd noise?
Oh, look, it's, how many times in the last, I've been a footy fan for near on 40 years. How many times have you seen a game where there's nobody there? Never. It just hasn't happened. I mean, there's always at least 1,000 or 2,000 people there, even at Roosters games, So we're used to hearing some crowd level. So when you see a game, and they're shooting it a little bit differently too, by the way. I don't know if you noticed, but they're not really going for the big wide shots anymore because there's no one in the stands.
There's no one in the stands.
So I think it's one of those things, like you just said, if you live beside the ocean, you hear the ocean. If you watch a game of football, you hear the crowd. I actually think it annoys me because I know there's no crowd there. It doesn't annoy me constantly, though, only when I think about it.
Mm.
And I think they've done a good job. I actually think the dynamic crowd noise, the way that they don't just have a soundtrack of crowd talking and clapping every now and then. It's designed to match the play, and I think it adds to the viewing experience on TV. I think they're doing a great job with TV. I really do. It's a really weird time to be at a live sports event with no people. To be able to maybe convince people at home, or maybe even just to make the people at home feel a little bit more relaxed to watch the game and just, business as usual kind of thing, then I think that it's working pretty well. I like it. I really like it.
He came around over the course of the weekend.
Yeah, it annoyed me to begin with because I knew no one was there. But after thinking about it and after being at the game yesterday when there was nobody there, it's a better thing to have a bit of crowd noise.
Yep. Where they are going to have to work out the kinks, I guess, is it obviously it peaks as the ball gets kicked in the air. That was a clear. I wonder how they're doing it. My gut feel is that there's someone who's actually monitoring a like a isolator or whatever you want to call it to go up and down with how the game is flowing.
I think there's somebody. I think there's somebody watching the game live.
Yeah, doing the levels.
And I reckon there's a few different tracks all running.
Yeah.
And when something happens, they will bring up the excitement track and then drop it down. But there's always that little bit of crowd noise there, which when you watch a game, it's not as much crowd noise as there is at the moment in the games, because at the moment they've always got the crowd noise there. There's a bit of crowd noise the whole time. Whereas at games, sometimes it can be deathly silent.
The hilarious part of a game, I remember back in the days when you could go to football, is that the crowd would be, here they're coming out, the music and, kick off. And the moment the ball got hit up for the first time, the whole place, there goes the silence. It's scary how, even with a big crowd, that can happen. So it could be one of those things where, because we're not used to hearing that noise all the way through, we're hearing it more. They did have a moment in the Canberra game where I think it was in that second half where the Storm were on the attack all the time, and it would have been a Storm home game. But the crowd's going nuts, and Canberra had the ball for 3 tackles after they diffused a kick. It's guys, just
wrong side.
Just ease it back a little bit. Canberra did play pretty well. The other thing we had to get to, just I guess as a reaction to the new things we saw on the weekend, is fans in the stands, mate. The NRL's been using the Xerox machine pretty hard over the last week or so. We both probably saw a few people that we knew in the stands across the weekend, whether they'd actually sent in a picture of themselves or not. There was some classic stuff happening on social media, though.
I didn't do much social media this weekend, but I obviously noticed the bollards or all the cutouts in the crowd.
Some of it was pretty good. I think I did get sent one this morning from the Matty John show, which they may have jumped the shark a little bit on that, putting a certain person from Europe in the 1940s on there. Never funny.
Really? Someone with a mustache?
Apparently. Anyway, that was something they did. But look, the challenge, it came out this morning that apparently a serial killer got printed out.
Oh, no.
So it was always going to happen. Whoever came up with that idea going for a serial killer, you've thought about it way too much, because clearly the poor person, NRL, proving some of this stuff, would have noticed it. I did see an interesting comment from Aaron Wallace, who's one of the stats guys at Fox Sports, and he was having a crack at, it was NRL or clubs, but at Campbelltown, the way that they pushed all the sponsors straight into the areas where the fans should be to be in the shot.
Yeah.
Did you notice that being at the ground, how high up the fans in the stands were compared to the sponsors? Because they were huge sponsorship awnings across the seats.
Yeah, no, there were some fans. There were actually some fans down on the fence, but the way they had it was they had them kind of in an outline of a rectangle, and then they had most of the So I guess it was just straight up to get more sponsor neds or something, wasn't it?
Yeah, and as I pointed out to Aaron, it's like, well, they paid their $22 plus GST to get on there as well. So you can't complain too much about that. Look, I understand the whole idea behind it. And look, if you're willing to pay it, good luck to you. And I hope you get to be seen on the big screen. The other thing I did see on Channel 9 yesterday afternoon when I watched that game, the fans taking video of themselves and sending it through. Every single one they used, you weren't watching the game, but every one they used on Sunday had clearly been pre-recorded.
Yeah.
I'm just like, sometimes these ideas, they think they sound great, but it's like, I just think about the logistics of somebody sitting there on Instagram through the whole game and being able to turn around a video coming in from a DM to then getting it on the, like, it's just not logical. I don't know.
It messes with my brain, mate.
It does. We have covered off the important parts of the show. We're going to get to the football after the break here on the Footy Show with our round 3 review.
Not the Footy Show.
Could you imagine taking a selfie video and I'm going to send this to some people just are dying for stardom or something. I'm not sure what it is.
I mean, look at us. We're videotaping our podcast on a Monday.
That was your request.
Got to give the people what they want, mate. More Cocksmith.
Stop it. Get some help. I'm Michael Jordan.
Okay, it's episode 213. It's time for our round 3 review. We're going to quickly go through the games from the weekend. Because it's Monday, still pretty fresh in your minds, we might as well do it. And we've also had no football for 3 months. So our hot takes, although that's the last segment, on how your team is going, will be pretty clear after we get through the matches. Mate, Thursday, we saw the Broncos and the Eels. And we saw a result that on the scoreboard said that Parramatta won convincingly.
Yep.
Not really how the game unfolded.
It wasn't a smashing.
Because Brisbane defended their pants off with no ball. I think they had 5 sets by like the 70th minute in the second half or something like that. But Parramatta, I'd give them credit though, because they didn't try and reinvent the wheel. What they did. And
no, they just did what they did last year.
They just pressure. And then we had the ability to knock them over in the end. A Broncos team that, it's funny, like you would have thought entering the year back right would have been their strength, but you take out a few players and all of a sudden they were really struggling on the edges last night, as well as getting chomped up through the middle. Para, they're top of the comp because they're for and against. I'm not losing my sanity over how well they played. They were good. Dylan Brown impressed me probably. Dylan Brown and Reid Marnie were the 2 impressive players for me out of that performance for the Eels.
I think Reid Marnie was probably the big improver, if you could say that, even though he's come off of a pretty good injury, bad injury, if you like. Moses did what he's been doing. He's solid and he's scheming, and he came into his own when the middle forward started to get a bit tired from the Broncos. The Broncos just didn't just looked lackluster to me. I know they're missing a couple of players. I think they'll be better for when those players come back. But I don't know. If the Broncos make the 8 this year, I think they're just going to make the 8. I think there's some teams around that are. I think there's at least 7 teams around that are better.
Well, remember, entering the weekend, we'd heard the story about how Seabold was going to rotate his squad. And I came back to you and said, well, look at the next 4 games the Broncos have got. They could conceivably be 2-4 after 6 weeks. Well, first one is down, and they've got the Roosters this week. So good luck, Seabold.
He'll rotate his squad, but he'll always pick the best 17.
Exactly. The next game, we saw the Cowboys and the Titans up there in Townsville. The Cowboys really didn't miss Michael Morgan that much, and it was a pretty impressive effort from Val Holmes. I thought was really good. Tamalolo, as advertised. The player though, I'll give a big rap to, and he should be starting for the Cowboys. And as good as young Jakey Granville was when he was young Jakey Granville, he's not the answer at 9. Reece Robson needs to be the 9 at the Cowboys.
Where was he last year, Reece Robson?
He was at the Saints. He was backing up.
Good let go. Nice let go, Mary.
Well, that's we'll get to the Dragons in a sec, but that was probably one player who can hold his head high after Saturday. But Reece Robson, he added something and he created. It's one of the things that Granville for years people said, great from dummy half. He's predictable at dummy half now, whereas Robson on Friday night, he was really selective in when he went and he cut up. The Titans team, look, they tried hard, but the cattle's not there. The changes that Holbrook made, they weren't going to result in like a 5-match winning streak. He's got to try some things, but there are some passengers up there and they're going to be there the rest of the year. He's just got to ride it and hope that his contract allows for 1 or 2 years of finishing in the bottom to look at years 3 and 4.
Yeah. I don't know if they're going to finish last, but they'll be in the bottom 3 for sure. The Titans. Drama's up there as far as cattle goes. That's all you can say about them, mate. I do think that the Cowboys had a good hit out, and I think that ground up there is going to be a little bit of a fortress up there. It's a long way to go.
So then come back.
We're going to come back the same day.
So
it's a long way to go, man.
It's not good. Drinkwater was impressive, as I said,
Very
Holmes
good
as
player.
well. And Jake Clifford probably had the best game I've seen him play in the top grade.
Yep.
The other game was the big blockbuster, Latrell versus 17 players that played with him last year. That's how I pretty much interpreted that match. Latrell was up for it in the second half. The first half undecided, but in the second half, I thought he probably did pull his finger out a little bit and had a bit of a crack. But this game, South were okay in the first half, all things considered. And the Roosters, they just seemed to just gradually just fill up the tank and get to that bit where you went, that's the team that won the comp back to back.
Yeah, look, the Roosters look good. Even young Kyle Flanagan is fitting in nicely. I mean, Keary's taken probably a little bit more responsibility in the halves, but blokes like Boyd Cordner, Boyd hadn't played since last year, and I think he looks a lot fresher. The lines that he's running are back to where. When he's got fresh legs, he'll run that inside line again. He'll come from the left back onto the inside. Sometimes he'll go behind the A defender or whatever. But he's looking fresh. He played the whole 80 minutes.
No, he didn't actually.
Oh, he didn't. I thought
he got subbed with about 10-15 to go when the game was won.
Oh, did he?
Which I think was a really good move from Robinson. And he's going to. Who was it? Someone it was the Fox commentary, I think. It was. But they mentioned that if we hadn't have had the delay at the start of the season he might not have played the first month. Yeah. Which makes a bit of a mockery for old Nick Politis' I'm preparing for 24-game season if he wasn't going to play for the first 4 weeks.
I think they're going to have to manage him, because he's obviously got ongoing issues. But the good thing is he doesn't have to worry about Origin until the end of the year. And, I think the Roosters are probably – again, pretty much deserved favourites for this competition. Just looking at that hit out, Souths for mine. Look, they look a little bit underdone in the forwards. They're not going forward very easy. I know they miss Sam Burgess big time, but it's like they need another. Maybe Cam Murray needs to go back to the middle. He's playing on an edge.
He couldn't have played any better than he played.
I know, but those speedy legs for the third play, like having him on the second or third hit up after a good hit up. They're missing a penetrating player. They got Burgess there, Tom, and there's other guys trying, but they just missed that real go forward and those fast feet. So
and Cook was busy. Cook wasn't. I wouldn't. Ineffective is the wrong word, but he tried his guts out. The guy who I thought played really poorly was Adam Reynolds. He was not.
Adam Reynolds didn't get. I heard a comment from a commentator about 70 minutes in and said Adam Reynolds hasn't been tackled yet with the ball. He hasn't taken the line on, and I don't know in the last
first half. First half, Troy Dargan, who's debuting, hits the wall.
Dargan was on his own. I don't know what. Maybe Adam Reynolds is good. I'm not sure. He's normally a pretty brave player, but look, on that kind of hit out, if you were to give the Roosters 10 out of 10, you'd have to be looking at about a 7 for the Rabbitohs with some work to do. Yeah. So hopefully the Clint Eastwood can get them.
I think Melbourne take on the Rabbitohs next week. That'll be an interesting challenge for South Sydney.
Yeah.
Saturday, the Warriors 44 of 46 or some ridiculous completion stat for them. They played pretty well. Look, you were watching the match and you sort of went, it was still it felt like a case of the only way they're really going to do anything is if Tuivasa-Sheck pulled something out. But Nicarima found some moments in the second half. They got lucky with the first try when Dufty couldn't handle the kick. And Katoa, the young fella, he looks like a prospect, that big fella. I mean, he's about 7'3". He's like
he's been around for a couple of years now, though.
Not Katoa. Katoa's...
What's his first name?
Elisa Katoa.
Oh, it's a different one. Okay,
he apparently has played 13 games rugby league and he's already played 3 first grade games. But that's not even as great as what the Warriors have been in terms of a good news story, staying in Australia and being willing to quarantine and stuff. It's not the story from this match. The story is the St George Illawarra Dragons, mate, and I'm going to leave it to you.
Oh, mate, they're just not trying. It's straight up and down. I don't know if McGregor's lost the dressing room, but they're not buying what he's selling. And in reality, I don't want to spend a long time on this, but I don't think you can blame McGregor. What you can do is you can blame the board that re-signed him, because they have this thing down there at St George Illawarra where they want to promote from within all the time. They want an old boy to come and coach the team. Well, the only success that they've had in the last 40 years is when Wayne Bennett won him a competition, and he's not an old boy. Yep. He's an old bloke, but he's not a St George old boy. Every time they've gone, the year after they went for the water boy, Steve Price, Wayne Bennett's water boy, dismal, absolutely dismal failure. Then McGregor, I mean, he's won 8 games out of 27, got a 29% win ratio overall. I mean, it's, they need a big clean out down there. I liken them a little bit to the Bulldogs. I think I might have said this to you. They need a big clean out. They need to stop promoting from within. They need to find people that can do the job. It's like a business. It's a business. If you've got a business and you think, oh, geez, I need a new financial director. The only person around here I haven't promoted lately is a janitor. I'll bring him in and do it. I mean, seriously, get the best person for the job. They're talking about possibly replacing McGregor, and why they probably won't or try not to is because they believe it's going to cost them $1.8 million. Now, I want to know how much he's getting paid.
The number they put out was
now, if he's getting paid any more than $200,000 a year, right? He is pulling the wool. Or again, you get whatever you can get. But anyone who signed him to any more than $200,000 a year is off their head. He's had no unbelievable player, good bloke, but he's had no success as a coach. None. Hasn't won anything. Right? So it's time for him to go, but I just don't know if they're going to be able to afford for him to go. They can't even let him go and bring the assistant in, because the assistant still is still under suspension.
Another year or two.
What a master stroke that was. And they're probably paying the bloke. They're probably paying him $300,000 or $400,000 a year too.
Surprise me. I'm going to come back to where I tracked you at the start of the year, start of the podcast, sorry, with the completions argument. Now, McGregor is always about, we beat ourselves today. We didn't execute the game plan. We didn't complete. We didn't hold the ball. 83% completion rate for the Dragons. They made almost as many meters, and I know stats, you can read them any way you like, almost as many meters as the Warriors. Only made 60 less tackles. Made almost the same amount of line breaks, tackle breaks. They had more in their set distance than my point is,
they're just all statistics that mean nothing at the moment because of the outcome, and because the Warriors did everything that St George did, but only better. But at the end of the day, the recruitment of not only the coach but the players at the Dragons is, raises an eyebrow or two every time you speak to somebody who knows what they're talking about. They brought Ben Hunt in on $1 million, which choked their salary cap. Okay. Yep. No one knows if he's a 6, 7, 9 or a 15. And I don't even think he knows.
It was Ennis. Ennis was talking on Fox Sports. He goes, you can't put him on the bench, put him at 9. But McInnes is, where's he going to play? Are you going to play him at lock?
Yeah. Their recruitment has been terrible. Frizzell's not interested, right? Obviously,
I've got a theory with Frizzell. I'll put it. He is a outstanding player at rep level, but struggles to make the same.
I know what
impact
you're going to say.
level.
No, I've seen him. I've seen him really dig in at club level when he's interested, and I
I'm
don't
not
think
saying the effort's not there. I just don't think he's. I don't think he's the wherever he's getting at Newcastle. He's apparently 700 or whatever, or he was on at the Dragon. He's not worth that money at club level. He's just not. You can't play. I don't think you can pay a back rower who offers what he offers, which is
well. Your mate
intangibles.
your mate John Bateman seems to think so, and I'll tell you right now, if I had to have one of those players playing for my life, I'll take Frizzell over Bateman. And
But
I'm not
that
just
speaks to what I'm saying about rep level.
And I'm not just being a Dragons fanatic.
That's what I'm saying. He's a lifter. He's a lifter in the games that matter.
But if you go across their team, let's give this another 30 seconds of air before we suffocate the thing. I think if you look across their team, they've let a lot of players go that they should have held on to. They went and picked. They thought they were doing a great job by picking up Corey Norman. Well, I'll tell you what. When the Broncos don't want him and Parra don't want him, there's an issue. So again, could be a fantastic guy. Wouldn't know. Ben Hunt dropped the grand final. They hired him. They thought it was a great masterstroke. Well, we've got the Broncos halfback that dropped the grand final. Seriously, they've got to start looking around and looking wider for people to run the club. Whoever's running the football at the moment, something's up. Having Jack de Belin hang around at training all the time can't be good. We've got to look after his welfare. Yeah, but it screwed everyone else's head.
Yep.
So they're a basket case, mate, and I suggest that they'll probably finish last. I wouldn't be surprised if they finish last. I think if they finish second last, they've done a good job for for the way they've started. So that's really, and I'm disappointed. You can hear it in my voice. I'm disappointed because every year this same thing, rolls around. What's that saying? About the definition of stupidity is to do the same thing over and over and over
Expect
again.
A different result.
Different outcome. They're just doing the same thing over and over and over again, and expecting.
And I'll make a prediction as we wrap up the Dragons. The fall guy this weekend will be one Matt Duffy because he's been the fall guy 17 times, and he.
Yep.
Anyway, let's move on, buddy.
They'll fire a winger and Matt Duffy.
Yep. Full time in the other matches. We'll get through them pretty quickly. Sharks and the Tigers. The Tigers started really well, then fell into a hole, and then they came back at the end. Tigers, look, that's a good win for them. That's a team they've got to beat to make the 8. So I can't be too critical of Cronulla. They weren't on, but Tigers, that's a good win.
Cronulla have had a difficult week. I know that nobody in the club, the playing group there, had to face a tribunal or whatever he's doing this week with Bronson Xerri, but it would affect him. He was an integral part of the team, and for that to happen to him with the drug scandal thing, then it upsets the team. I feel sorry for John Morris. I mean, the bloke can't take a trick.
No.
When he lobbed to the joint, they were over the salary cap, and he had to wear that, as a kind of badge of dishonour, and the rest of the club. But that said, taking nothing away from the Tigers, they did really good, mate. The little bit of steel that Madge brings to some teams, or most teams that he coaches, I think is starting to emerge now with the Tigers, and we're seeing a team that won't give up as easy. I just think with the Sharks this weekend, Moylan first game back, rusty. Dugan kind of petered out after about 60 minutes. I don't know what happened. He seemed to have run out of interest or petrol. I'm not sure. Probably more petrol than anything else, But yeah, they got some work to do. They got some work to do, mate.
Next game was probably, look, I'm a Raiders fan, but probably the most impressive win of the weekend, which was Canberra over Melbourne in Melbourne.
Says the Raiders fan. Yeah, go on.
Well, my team won, so I can say what I like. Has your team won? No, haven't won this year. We've won 3 in a row. Interesting. Raiders 22.
When did you last win a grand final? Oh, that's
right. Yeah, 1994. I remember. Then we won in 1990, and then we won in 1989 as well.
Saints have won a few too, mate.
Yeah, not as many since we've won. Anyway, 22-6. Canberra were really good. Their first 20, they blew Melbourne out of the park, and Melbourne chased their tails pretty much after that, even though they had a really good swing of possession in that second half. They had the ball a lot on Canberra's line. Canberra didn't play well with the ball in that second half, but their defence stood up. And I know we didn't really do a preview of the weekend, but I was pretty confident going into this game in regards to I felt we were a better team. And I haven't felt this way for about 25 years in regards to playing really good football teams. Going into the match thinking, we are a better team than them. I felt at times we might be a better team. We might beat them. We could beat them. But through this game, I'm thinking, we'll hold on here. And we might even, it might be 18-6 at full time. We've got to try at the end with a bit of flair. But the story of this match, two things. Firstly, Josh Hodgson played really, really well. And to ever back up the whole stats don't matter thing, I think he had 30-odd tackles, 7 missed tackles, 11 stats, put him to the side sometimes because he was influential in that game. And George Williams. Now, had you seen any of George Williams before he arrived in Australia, mate?
No, not a game. Nothing.
Now, I know we discussed it, and I said I was pretty excited about the fact we'd got him. I'd seen enough to say that he was a bit of a running 7. He was fantastic. I'm not going to spend. We haven't got heaps of time left, but Canberra, it's nice to have a halfback. That's all I will say. Any thoughts on the Raiders?
Yeah, look, mate, they were very, very impressive. They've gone up a gear since last year, I think. And that's my whole feeling across the whole weekend was that most teams were rusty, especially in their attack, except for the Raiders. The Raiders look good. In saying that, Whiten was a little quiet, probably quieter than what I would have thought. But you don't mind that when you've got Williams. You want one of your halves to be having a good game, the other one just to play kind of like a sideman role. And it doesn't matter which one. But there'll be games this year where Whiten will be more dominant, But I think Canberra did a great job of frustrating Melbourne. They played ad-lib football as well as structure. And Charnsy Nickel-Clockstad is a superhero as far as I'm concerned. The amount of meters he brought the ball back from the back, he's got a great work ethic.
And hard runs. Yes. Not just your kick return
not
meters.
Just trotting to the line. No, he runs hard. He takes on the forwards in the middle. He's a real asset. I think that Ricky should try and tie him up for I don't know if he has, but
I think he's ended 2023. I think he's contracted at the moment.
Yeah, good.
Unless he changes to Isaac Moses as his manager, and then he'll be
off
contract
maybe he might
about
get
3 minutes.
an extension till 2033. No, look, I think the whole team looked really good. Looked really well coached. And I don't say that lightly with Ricky because he and I have had a love-hate, although it's more love these days than hate.
I've turned you around on Ricky. Come on, let's be honest.
Yeah. Actually, Ricky turned me around on Ricky. No, mate, they did really good. What about Papali? When he's off the field and when we were texting, but when Horsburgh and he were off the field, they did look like that maybe Melbourne had their measure. And Ricky made us kind of almost gasp for air, like those last 3 or 4 minutes before they came back on, they looked like they were going down the drain, Canberra. They looked like they just lost their momentum, and then when the big Ranger and Papali came back on, that's, the Ranger did make one mistake there with a silly attempted pass, but he's young, but as soon as Papali comes back on, it's like the rudder is back on the boat. He's a really integral part to their team, as is Hodgson and so.
And they've still got to add Bateman to this team, and we know how good he was last year. Let's get through the other games quickly. You're at Panthers Knights.
I was.
We both agree, effort-wise and gut-wise, sensational effort from Newcastle.
Absolutely. 15 players.
You lose Pearce and you lose Watson, which are their 2 main attacking players on that field. But that wasn't how they won the game with attack. It was their defence was phenomenal. As Penrith, and we touched on it earlier, just seemed to want to get through the whole completion idea. The let's get up the field and get to a kick, and let's go up the field and get to a kick. And they got a kid like Stephen Crichton, who I was cheering was in the starting team. And the only time he got the ball was on a cross kick because they were trying to use his height. Just throw on the ball. See what happens. He had Anari Tuala up against him. I mean,
he needs the ball in open play, Stephen Crichton. It seemed to me that Penrith played with a little bit of arrogance. I think they thought they had it won when they got to 14-0. And it's not often that you can get to 14-0 and then not a team's going to come back at you at some stage. And I think Penrith were lucky and unlucky. They were desperately unlucky that Cleary didn't play because I think it would have been probably a different result. They were lucky that Pearce and Watson went.
And Ponga wasn't playing at all.
And I think Penrith is also unlucky that Matt Burton can't kick a field goal. 5 attempts, every one of them in front. They were a bit out.
They were gifts for a player who clearly can hit the ball pretty well.
He kicks it a long way. Pressure might have gotten to him. I don't like to to really hang them out to dry too much when they're very young, like he is. But from 5 attempts, you've got to be getting one of those. I hope he's practicing this week. I hope he's practicing his field goals. I know Cleary would have slotted probably 4 of those 5.
Yeah, he gets another week in first grade. And the interesting part of that performance was that Burton did all the kicking and Jerome Lelai did not.
Jerome was very quiet.
I found that fascinating. I just went...
It's weird, mate, because everyone says that Jerome was a better halfback when they were in the 15s and 16s than Cleary. And Cleary obviously, matured and emerged more. But Jerome, I don't know. Maybe I'm reading it wrong, but I look at him and I watch him be very hot and cold. And some games I've seen him play, he's been very good. I just want him and Cleary to settle together and let's just hope they can TikTok dance.
I was just surprised that Luai wasn't the dominant half, given he's going to be the guy alongside Cleary next up. Anyway, Newcastle, that's a hugely valuable point for them. You will take that with both arms if you O'Brien, the coach up there, who has been preaching defence apparently since the day he got up there. The final match.
Doing a good job.
Let's not talk about it much, but the Tommy show, Trebojevic 32, Bulldogs 6, and they're likely to get 6.
They were lucky to get 6, mate. They jagged that 6.
We're not going to spend heaps of time on these guys because there's a couple of things we have to talk about to finish the show. But
look, mate, Manly were as strong as lots of people are saying. A lot of people are saying that they're in the top 4. I believe they're a top 8 team. The Bulldogs are a bottom 4 team. They struggle. They struggle because they don't have a halves. They don't have one half between the two that are playing now. It's any good, or good enough to get them into finals football for that matter. I think they struggle right across the field. I think they got the wrong guy in the number 1 jersey. I just think that poor old Dean Pay, every time he tries to bring someone to the club or tries to get a signing, he gets hit on the head with a hammer and says, "Get back in your corner, mate. We do that stuff here, not you." So I think that his hands are tied a little bit, mate. And the Bulldogs will have an unhappy year. They'll beat a couple of teams, but they're going to have an unhappy year.
Yep.
Unfortunately.
They've got Kieran Foran evidently soon to return. And he was a big reason why they had a pretty good back end of the year last year.
He played very good. Yeah.
This isn't going to fix things for the Bulldogs, but I would like to see him give Averillo a chance somewhere in that team and just see what he's got. And he may not have it. I mean, you can come on with 20 minutes to go and flash once or twice and everyone goes, give him the keys to Castle. You can't do that.
Yeah.
But
no.
I don't know, maybe it's 6. I wouldn't put him in the centres because the pressure on him then defensively is too big for a kid that age. Maybe fullback. I'm with you. I think DWZ hasn't played good football for a long time. I didn't like how he left Penrith. It would seem like a bit of a toys out of the cot moment. And he does not want to catch the high ball. Watch every time. He has no confidence going up for the high ball whatsoever. And he can't have that fullback.
He's got to go back to the wing. Meany's got to go to fullback, in my opinion. I think the Marshall King, if they're going to persist with him in the team, he's got to be in the 6 if they're not going to hire someone like Josh Reynolds. And they need to manufacture a hooker.
Well, Lachlan Lewis, he can tackle.
Yeah, maybe he's the answer.
I don't know.
I'm not too sure, but he's not the answer at half or 5'8".
Neither's Cogger.
Sure.
Cogger put the line through. I'm sorry. It's just he's not the guy for him.
Lakin
showed more.
Was it a spoken line through?
Line through. Although Mick Ennis was more forthright in regards to that. We have some hot takes. Speaking of hot takes, Michael Ennis. To wrap up the show, we're only got about 5 minutes, so we'll be back after the break here on Not The Footy Show.
Not The Footy Show.
It's a proud, successful club. They don't want to wait 3, 4, 5 years for these juniors to come through.
So what's the solution? The
solution is put Foran in when he comes back healthy and put Reynolds next to him. They're 2 quality halves that can manage them through this period. Josh's deal would only be for 18 months.
It's like a sauna in here.
Okay, wrapping up episode 213, Not The Footy Show. It's Monday after round number 3. Roberto Cocksmith over there, Warrick Nicolson here. This is going to be a hot takes segment, mate. It's amazing what happens when you haven't had Rugby League for 3 months. Everybody thinks that we've been playing for 3 months. So we have to have categoric hot takes that will impact the rest of the year, the rest of the decade, and most of them have come from the Daily Telegraph. To start with, though, probably my favourite is when you get a journalist who is known for a sport who ends up on some of those sort of variety talk shows, sport talk shows, and ends up actually being very good at talking about all sports. And funnily enough, I'm not talking about Peter Fitzsimmons. I'm talking about Robert Craddock. He has come out, and I haven't read the article. I'm going to be very honest here. I have not read the article because I have no desire to read the article. But the headline is pretty much, is Craig Bellamy's time up at the Melbourne Storm? How do you take that for a hot take, mate?
Look, Craig Bellamy's time's up when Craig says time's up, mate. And I don't care what anyone says. Melbourne Storm will not be the last club he coaches. Here's a hot tip for you right now. I'll even go further. 2022, when the new Queensland team comes in, Bellamy will coach him. Here's one for you. How about that? He'll cop 1.2 million a year.
Bellamy's Bombers, is that what you're saying to me? Bellamy's Bombers, mate.
Whatever. The Ipswich, I don't know, whatever. I think that's where they're going to put a team. I reckon they're going to put a team in Toowoomba or Ipswich, and I think they'd be smart to do that because Ipswich is probably better because it's like the western suburbs version of Sydney, and I think there's a lot of people out there in the heartland that like rugby league. But Craig Bellamy's time is not up at Melbourne.
He's lost one game. They won the first two matches. They won the minor premiership. Like, it's just
He's
so
the winningest
laughable.
coach in the comp.
It's like, I need to fill some words. What am I going to write? And speaking of which, we have another one. Also from the Telegraph. They decided that given Tom Trbojevic was so good last night, is it possible that Tom Trbojevic is putting pressure on James Tedesco for the New South Wales Origin fullback job?
No.
It's like, they even did a poll. And I know it riles me up. I know the whole idea behind the people sitting there is going, what can we do that can get some clicks? What can we do that can get people angry? That's all
the Telegraph's about now, mate. Is clickbait.
Why can't we just be happy that both played outstandingly well on the weekend? Funnily enough, we won Origin with Tommy in the centres. So to do your one, hello. I really struggle with that. Just celebrate the fact that they're both guns and that they're both New South Welshmen. And
how could anyone that knows anything about rugby league look at Tedesco's game the other night against South and Tommy's game on Sunday and think that Tedesco's going down the drain? I mean, Tommy played outstanding. Don't get me wrong. He always has. He's a great player. Yep. But again, you pick a player to play for your life. If you want James, you want Tommy. I'll take James.
Yep, Teddy. The last one. Actually, there's 2B. Michael Ennis, we discussed it this morning at what was a prelude to this podcast. He was scathing on the Bulldogs. That's what he's paid to do. At Fox Sports, he is paid to basically have a thought and then fill 30 seconds. That's the way it works. Yep. And he swept the broom through the Bulldogs halves and a bunch of players. And then he pushed the Josh Reynolds barrow, mate. He believes that they should never have got rid of him, which, if we just go back for 2 seconds, the reason the Bulldogs did not hold on to Josh Reynolds is that he wanted $900,000, and at that stage, they weren't even convinced he was in their first grade team.
Well, I don't know if he wanted 900. To be fair, I think the Tigers offered 900, and he went, "Oh, really? Okay, well, I can probably get about 500 or 550 here. You know what? I think I'll take the 900." And Bulldogs, so it was his choice.
The Bulldogs have made the right call by moving on from him. They weren't getting anywhere with him in there. And look, I said this to you in the text. I think their investment in Kieran Foran was a better use of their resources because I think he offers more than what Reynolds could. But Ennis is now pushing Reynolds will fix everything.
Yeah, look, I'll take you to task a little bit. I actually think I do agree with what you're saying in as much as they moved on from Josh Reynolds.
Yep.
But what they've purchased since is no better than Josh Reynolds. You know what I'm saying?
I'm not disagreeing with that.
But they didn't want to cough up the other 300 or 350,000 to keep him. They wanted to invest in the future, although those investments haven't turned out to be great. But
which is their prerogative.
He's only played. I think he's played
10
last year. I think it's 12 or 13 games he's played, all up for about $1.7 million. They've 13 games or 14 games at the most. I think it was 5 1 year and 7 last year. Or 5 1 year and 8, whatever it is. It's under 15 games. And look, he has had off-field dramas, which was, well publicised last night on 60 Minutes. And just for the record, that chick's crazy, man.
I didn't watch it.
Oh, she's cray. She's out there. Oh, she's out there, boy. Oh, man. Anyway, so I've got to feel sorry for him in that regard. But I'll tell you, I think he would be a good fit to go back. The problem is the hurdle they've got is the $900,000 or $850,000 that the Tigers are paying him. They don't want to pay any of it, right?
Yeah.
And obviously the Bulldogs want a bargain. So, I don't know how much the Tigers would be willing to pay. They might pay 200 of it to offload him, but he's going to have to take a pay cut to go back.
It's not the way forward for the Dogs. And I hear he probably would improve them to a degree, but he's not going to change the fortunes of that club. So it's you got to move on from that. And look, if it means you're moving on from the Coggers and the Lewises and the Wakeham, or they re-sign Wakeham, but just settle down with sign this bloke from reserve grade, because he didn't even make the Tigers team this weekend.
I get what you're saying, right? But just picture this from the Tigers' point of view. I think the Tigers want Josh Reynolds to be interested in going back to the Bulldogs. That's what they want.
They signed him.
Well, some people can't, but I still think that they want that narrative. They want people to be talking about this. And the Bulldogs are interested because they've got nobody else. So it could be a meeting of the minds, and it could be a match made in heaven or hell. Who knows which one? But I get what and Ennis is frustrated because he's seeing the team go down the drain every week that they're playing, and it's got to be frustrating for old mate Dean Pay as well. So anyway, what's your next hot cake?
To make me feel any better, I'll just level it out a little bit. How Ennis feels about the Bulldogs right now is how I felt about New South Wales when Ennis was at the number 9 job ahead of Rocky Farah. Just saying it. That's how I felt. I couldn't understand it.
Yeah, you know what? I'll even the argument out and tell you that I much preferred Ennis to Farah.
That's all the time we have for anybody today. We have to go. The last hot take is actually a good hot take. It's from @Gauntlets, which is a Twitter account. It's Let's Go on Warriors. He goes, how good do we play when the threat of Paul Gallen joining us is hanging over our heads if we don't perform?
Yeah, I saw that. That's a
round of applause. That is outstanding. That is the hot take of the weekend. And that is episode 213 of Not The Footy Show. Rob Cox, thanks very much for your company, buddy.
No worries, mate. Thank you. Thank you very much. I've got to go to the
got
post
that
office.
one out pretty well. We will try and do more regular pods in the wake of weekend football if we can. One of the things we're doing on YouTube actually is we're splitting up the pod. So if you don't want to sit through the hour or so that we do and you want to see a segment, we'll just put the segment up. So as I mentioned at the start of the show, the six again, yet again, I'll cut it up, put it out, and you can watch in each segment if you would like. Facebook.com/NRL podcast, YouTube.com/W Nicolson, just like the website. You can watch all those segments at NRL Tweet, at Rob Cox with 2 Bs. And that's been another edition of Not The Footy Show. Thanks, mate.
Awesome, mate. Catch you soon, eh? Pepsi.
Not The Footy Show.
So one will be yours. I have actually helped. I think I bought 20 of them. So.
Oh yeah, you're going to.
We can either sell them or we can gift them out.
It's people's escape. It's people's relaxation, and we need to do everything in order to continue that great tradition of
Not The Footy Show.
Pepsi.